What can I say about Dr. Savage? Dr. Savage and I went to medical school together. We were lab partners in gross anatomy at Case Western Reserve University. And I always joked around that if he and I ever discovered a disease, it'd be called gross Savage disease, and I don't think you'd ever... That'd be the worst thing ever you could probably get. But from Brighton, Michigan, Dr. Chad Savage, thanks.
Thank you for coming to my lecture. My lecture is on how direct primary care can decrease aggregate annual health care spend. Now, I know what you're all thinking. You're thinking, woohoo, I can't miss that one. That's got to be good. Thank God I woke up this morning to come to this one. Okay, it may seem like a pretty boring topic, but boy, that was hard to do that Phil Eskew voice for that long. All right, but, sorry, Phil. But this is an incredibly important topic, because if you don't understand how to describe this to people, this is a topic that you're going to be approached with every single day that you're doing direct primary care. How is it that paying a membership model isn't simply adding cost to an already massively overpriced system? So my hope is in the next 20 minutes that I'm going to describe this to you so you can go back with your own arguments and help convince people, not only that it doesn't have to be more expensive, that in fact if you design it right, it can be dramatically less so. So to begin with, you have to describe, well, what is direct primary care? Direct primary care is a membership model of medical care. It's a low-cost monthly membership that many times is less costly than a gym membership. And it includes everything in a wrap price that a primary care office would classically do, all of the office visits. Now, this is a very important point to touch with people, because when you spend more to see your doctor, not surprisingly, you see them less. And multiple studies have now shown that if you delay going to your primary care doctor, that initially sounds cost effective, right? You're spending less on primary care services, but the savings you get on primary care services are doubled in new costs of hospitalization. Now that is not only a massive financial toll, but that is a massive human toll, because that is people getting sick, being ill, coming in, needing surgery, in some cases even dying because they delayed care. Direct primary care, don't need to worry about that. Come and use us. To maximize the value and get away from nickel and diming, we include all in-office diagnostics, EKGs, spirometries, pulse oximetries. We include all our procedures, basic joint injections, cryotherapy, ear lavage, whatever it is that we'd classically do in the context of primary care office, we do at no additional charge. And this is where direct primary care really starts to get innovative. It's the inclusion of technology, like Josh was talking about, through telemedicine. What I like to call virtual home visits, because I think that better encapsulates what that really is. This is using technology to allow patients to access us from the point that's most convenient for them, as long as it's medically appropriate to do so. So this is a massive savings for them, because now instead of having to leave work to come and see us, they can text us, email us, whatever it is, as long as it's medically appropriate, and they save on what's called opportunity costs. That's the value of their time. The value of their time if they were going to be doing something else, like continuing to work or being with their family or whatever it is that they want to do. And even the insurance model recognizes that this is a great, great value. The problem is they can't figure out how to code it, how to compensate us for an email, for a text message. Well, the beauty in direct primary care is they don't have to worry about it. Our time has already been valued in the membership. So we can incorporate the current technologies or any new technology that comes along as soon as it's invented. So we save a lot on our cares. But we also, and Vance, again, as I understand, is doing a lot of this, we've gone out and negotiated discounted rates on cardiac diagnostics, imaging, lab testing, and through our in-office pharmacy, generic medications, vitamins, OTCs, and even some durable medical equipment. And let me show you some examples of this. This is my own personal pharmacy, and these are current rates that we're able to dispense to our patients some medications. And if you can see here, for example, Crestor. We can dispense an entire month of Crestor for 45 cents. We can do Z-Paks for 99 cents. And we can do lisinopril, if you look at there. If you've got hypertension, one of the leading causes of premature preventable death in the United States, we can treat that for 24 cents. We can treat an entire month of one of the leading preventable causes of death for an entire month for less than the cost of a gumball. So then I also like to show people other things that we negotiate, and these are billed rates for other common services, x-rays and MRIs. And I like to show them what we can obtain these exact same tests and procedures for. And if you look at that MRI as an example, and you look at the total savings we can get on one test, and if you look at what my practice's annual rates are, if this were an 18-year-old kid who's playing football, and he goes out and he blows out his ACL and he needs an MRI, he saves enough on one test alone, that he could have paid for unlimited direct primary care for 8 years. Just 8 years, yeah. So, and a lot of people, I show them these rates and they don't believe it, and they think, well, you're making up these numbers, those are artificially high. So I also like to show people bills, actual bills from patients, and this was just a couple months ago. And a gentleman came to me and he showed me what he was personally charged for his diabetic testing supplies. And if you can't read it here, he got 4 boxes of diabetic test strips, he got 2 boxes of lancets, and he paid essentially $250 for that. Well, after he did so, he came to me and he said, well, if I had ignored my insurance and I just come to you, what could I purchase those for? And it turns out we can get the 4 boxes of test strips for $31. We can get the 2 boxes of lancets for $1.92 for a total cost of $33. That's a savings on one fill of his diabetic test supplies of $212, which if he's a diabetic who tests 3 times a day, that means his annual savings was essentially $1,200 on his diabetic test supplies alone. And that's outside of all the other savings we get and the lack of co-payments, et cetera. That means, again, with the savings on diabetic test supplies based on his age, he could have seen us potentially for as many as 3 years on his diabetic test supplies for 1 year savings on those alone. Here's another one. So this was just about a month ago. A patient of my partner took an order that she gave him. He went out to the local university lab, and he has insurance. Understand, both of these 2 last examples, they both had insurance. And he had a fairly common lab battery. You guys all recognize these tests. These aren't that extraordinary. And he was charged in excess of $1,000. He came back to me and said, maybe I should have come to you guys and just done the direct primary care approach for that. How much would it have cost us? And it turns out it would have cost $106. The markup on those labs were essentially 1,000% from what we could have gotten him. And then just to rub it in, I made a graph and showed him this. So I wish I could do that for Josh. Anyway, the yellow, massive yellow spires you see here, that's what he actually paid for. He actually paid for these labs. And those little red bumps on the bottom, that's the price we could have obtained them for in a direct primary care relationship. And if you look at the first one, it's the CMP, the Comprehensive Metabolic Panel. He was charged $161 for something that we could have gotten for $5.40. He was charged essentially $60 more for the CMP alone than we could have done all of it. And his TSH, 120, we could have gotten it for $7.14. And then if you put them all together, again, you see this massive yellow tower. I just like to belabor points. This massive yellow tower, and the little red thing, which shows that on, again, one blood test alone, we could have saved him $912. Again, that's several years of direct primary care, unlimited access, no conflicts of interest, the better accessibility, all for the savings that he would have gotten on just one blood test. So I've showed you how we save money on our care, how we save money on blood tests, imaging, diagnostics, and the like. So a lot of you start going, well, geez, if I pay for all this on my own, well, does that mean I can buy less expensive coverage? And the answer is absolutely. So this is where this wonderful synergism starts to occur. So with direct primary care, we make much more attractive, inexpensive coverage options, like high deductible PPO plans, like the non-traditional Christian health sharing. These are things like Liberty, who's one of our sponsors, I guess, here tonight. We get MediShare. We get Christian Healthcare Ministries, Samaritan Ministries, and several others. These are ACA-compliant coverage options. They are not insurance, but they are recognized by the government as adequate coverage so that you do not get an ACA or Obamacare penalty for not having adequate coverage. It also works really well with ERISA-based self-insurance plans. These are for businesses, and I'll come back to those. And it also works with short-term insurance policies. These are not ACA compliant, As it stands today, you still can get a penalty. As I understand, an executive order was signed yesterday that may make it so that these could be annual plans. Currently, they're quarterly. You have to renew them every 3 months. It's a bit onerous. But if it's yearly, that's essentially people are changing their insurance every single year as it is anyway. So this would make it much closer to that. But you can get a penalty for that. This is not recognized as adequate currently by the government as adequate coverage. So you could get a penalty. But when you see the cost savings, you may say, well, who cares? So I'd like to use this slide to debunk a common myth, the myth of quote-unquote good insurance. So I would argue that people tend to get very expensive insurance and say, I've got good insurance, but I don't agree with that at all, and this is why. I went out and this is a hypothetical 58-year-old patient Bob, love Bob. We went and I got quotes, actual quotes in the state of Michigan for various policies for him, and I used the most expensive and least expensive policy to demonstrate here. And to explain quickly what you're seeing, the gray is premium. That is what you pay to your insurance company every single year, irrespective of whether or not you've ever seen a doctor. The yellow is deductible. That's what you pay 100% out of pocket before your insurance company covers anything. And the red is all the co-payments and co-insurance that you could potentially pay on top of all that before your insurance is maxed out and actually takes over all the payments. A lot of people are under this fallacy that once they go through their deductible, they don't have any more costs, but actually most plans are either 90-10 or 80-20, and these are 80-20, meaning they still bear 20% of a false price. Well, what does that mean? It's a false price. So the fallacy here is that it's a good idea to get the gold plan because, I want to cover everything once I start using services. But if you look at that and you imagine a hypothetical worst year of your life where you blow your appendix, you're in an ICU, you get surgery, and you max these plans out, what you see here is he still spends over $4,000, in the vicinity of $4,000 more with the gold plan than he would if he maxed out the bronze plan. And if you look at that hypothetical worst year of your life under the bronze plan, and you track it over to the premium of the gold plan, essentially what you see is that they've wrapped in the worst medical year of your life into their premium every single year. So all you've managed to accomplish by buying that gold plan is giving yourself the financial equivalent to the worst medical year of your life every single year compared to the bronze plan. Now, a lot of people, that big yellow blob on the right there, the right. Sorry, everything's backwards. Is the huge deductible that you get under the bronze, and that scares people. They go, ooh, I'm at risk for $6,600. I may have to pay $6,600. I don't call that risk. I call that opportunity. Because if you're a good healthcare consumer, that is baked into the gold plan. If you're a rational healthcare consumer, you may not spend $6,600. So you have the possibility of saving that money. So that's where direct primary care comes in, because we get good rates. So let me show you a hypothetical year in the life of Bob. A diabetic, they have impaired immune system, so he gets a bout of pneumonia, he gets a scare or some chest pain, and this is an example of all the charged rates over the entire course of the year. And where it says your choice, that's the name of my DPC, so just imagine that's direct primary care. So this is all his visits, all his labs, all his meds. The only thing I didn't include here is the diabetic testing supplies, and as you can see from that prior slide, I probably should have, the difference would be more stark. And as we go into the next slide, this includes his pneumonia visits, a chest x-ray, the antibiotics, he gets a stress test, a Holter monitor, EKGs, everything. So under the insurance model, he is charged $5,400 for his care that year. The exact same care, the exact same test, the chest x-rays, the stress test, everything under direct primary care. In fact, I would argue it's not the exact same, it's better. He's got better access, no conflicts of interest with his doctor. The entire thing is $832. That's a massive savings. Now, how does that work with insurance products? Because a lot of you may intuitively be saying, yes, but the insurance would have picked up some of that charge. And in fact, you're right, but at what cost? So here is that hypothetical year now plugged into various coverage options. And the two examples on the left are with traditional insurance. So if he went with that gold plan, and he was to bill everything out through his insurance, despite that massive premium, he would still bear out-of-pocket expenses of almost $1,000 for his care. Now, he heard my lecture, and he goes, well, I'm going to be smart. I'm not going to buy that gold plan. I'm going to buy the bronze plan. And great, he saved $6,000 on the premium. However, Now that he's utilizing medical services, he's getting those terrible, terrible false prices of the traditional insurance model. So he ends up paying back $4,700 of that. He's still better off than what if he got in the gold plan. But this is where the beautiful synergy starts to manifest. The middle bar is a bronze plan with direct primary care. Now you'll see that's $808, it's not $832, because we could still bill out the once-a-year annual labs with a Z00.00 code, and hopefully the insurance would pick those up. So I stripped those out and want to make this as accurate as possible. But now he saves on the premium, and when he's accessing care, he saves on the care as well. And what's so ironic is he would have bought the gold plan because he thought he'd save when he accessed his care. Direct primary care with the bronze plan is still cheaper when he's accessing care by about $130 than if he'd done the gold plan and stuck with a traditional practice. But now if he's really bright, he goes over to the right side and he starts looking at, actually there's many ways you can interpret that, the right side. He starts looking at the alternative coverage options, health sharing, and again, this is an example of Liberty Health Share. I'm sorry, the label didn't pop up there. So the second one from the right is Liberty Health Share, and the one on the farthest to the right, that's a short-term health policy from the state of Michigan. And now Liberty, the reason it's not the $832 is because Liberty, at least historically, had contributed a little bit to direct primary care memberships. I don't know if they still do that, so this may be dated material. But in both of those scenarios, he does not submit a dime of the rest of what he's doing to either one of those coverage options. He just accepts that he's going to get a better rate through direct primary care, and he uses those as essentially catastrophics. He says, if I burst my appendix, I'm going to use these, but otherwise I'm just getting my regular routine care and I'm going to pay directly for it. And what's so amazing is that by just changing, everything else is the same, just changing how he pays for his medical care for 1 year, he can save in 1 year $12,000. One person, $12,000 every year. Because this is not an implausible year for this individual. That works out to $231 every single week, which if you look at my practice's annual membership, that means he would have essentially covered the entirety of his annual membership by the second week of the year with the savings he got by just changing up how he pays for the system. That means he would have paid for unlimited primary care before the bowl games are over, where Michigan is going to do better than Ohio State. Sorry, that's an inside joke for Lee. So anyway, so I started thinking about this. I thought, well, how much of this is direct primary care? Now you see this little blue bar I added over here? It's not lined up really well. But that's direct primary care. That's the entirety of our membership at my DPC practice. See, do you see it? See it right there? I don't know, it's hard to see. Do you see that? See it right here? This one right there. Right there. That little thing? That is 80% of your medical care. 80% of medical care can be done out of primary care offices. The rest of this is essentially mainly insurance mumbo jumbo. So I started looking at this. I thought, boy, that's a little blue bar. I wonder how many of them it would take to make up the difference of that massive gray spire on the left. And I realized that it would take 24 of these things stacked on top of each other. You can see the amateuristic nature of this graphic. And I only got to 15, I gave up. But anyway, you can see that you could basically see your direct primary care doctor for 24 years, essentially a quarter century, for what you can do for just the savings by changing your coverage product and using direct primary care for 1 year. So I'd like to touch quickly on ERISA-based plans. These are self-insurance plans for companies. So to give you the broad overview of this, if these can be used for big or small companies. If a company normally is going to spend $100,000 on premium, that's money they would give to an insurance company never to see again. There is an opportunity to potentially save money there. In an ERISA plan, they actually put some of that money aside and they fundamentally self-insure from that. So in the $100,000 premium example, they would have put $60,000 aside in what's called a claims fund or a risk pool. And from that money, they would pay for the medical expenses of their employees. With another $30,000 of that original 100, they would go out and buy what's called a stop-loss plan. These are essentially catastrophic plans for a business. Most years you don't use them. In a bad year where they blow through the $60,000, a true insurance pops in to cover that business and prevent them from additional loss, and then 10% of that goes to a TPA, a third-party administrator, a manager to manage that fund. Now, why does this work so well with DPC? It works so well with DPC because we try to save them money. So the chance of them using the entirety of that $60,000 is actually fairly low. So if they use about $10,000, that company, this is their money, has $50,000 left over with which they can give a stock bonus or a stock dividend. They can give a bonus to their employers or whatever they want to do with that money because it is in fact that company's money. So what does saving money on healthcare do for companies and potentially even our country? Well, if somebody comes up to you and say, what do you make for a living? And you make $50,000 a year in wages, you tend to tell them $50,000. But your employer may not see it that way because the average employer spends 30% above and beyond wages on benefits costs, the vast majority of which are health care. So they don't see you as costing $50,000. They say, we compensate you $65,000. So if you're able to decrease health care costs, you could give to that employee in an era of stagnating wages a 10% pay raise. Imagine what that would do for morale, all while decreasing the cost of employing them by $5,000. So you're decreasing labor costs while actually paying more. This would mean that that company is now more competitive. And if this is done nationwide, we could produce goods and services in the United States at more competitive rates and compete better globally. This would cause an economic boom in our country. Now, Lee had asked me at the end of my talk to give a quick 30-second pitch. So direct primary care is a low-cost membership model of medical care. It includes all of your office visits, all of your in-office diagnostics, all of your in-office testing, telemedicine, no conflicts of interest, Costco-like savings on meds, labs, and imaging. Everybody gets the Costco model when you say it that way. You save so much on this that allows for much less expensive coverage option that could save you thousands of dollars, all for less than a cup of coffee per day. So I've mentioned what direct primary care does for patients. But what does it do for us? What do we get from direct primary care? We get our freedom. Freedom from billers and coders and their ridiculous documentation requirements. Freedom from packed schedules that prevent you from having the time to actually care. Freedom to design your schedule in a way that allows you to actually live. Freedom to have a job that pays well, that you love. And freedom to be the best damn doctor that you can be. Thank you.